Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. Into what as I just said a minute ago, is not only the biggest story in college football, but one of the biggest stories in sports, period. And that is the cancellation of the Michigan-Ohio State game. First time since 1917, over 100 years. Shout out to all of you who may have been alive when that happened. I'm guessing it's probably nobody listening to this show, but it's been a long time. And it's been a long time. This was both a surprising piece of news, a surprising development, and also not surprising. Because if you really go back, even dating back to last week on this show, we talked about Kirk Herbstreit's commentary about would Michigan wave the white flag? Would they fake it? Would they try to get out of it? A day later, they canceled the Maryland game. And, of course, on Tuesday, they canceled the Ohio State game. Before we get into the ramifications for both sides, I do want to say very quickly, if you want to come in with the hot take that Harbaugh and Michigan are ducking Ohio State, this ain't the place, man. This ain't the place. You know that I will call out a school, a program, a coach, a team, an administration that I think is ducking an opponent. I thought Florida State did that against Clemson. That is not the case with Michigan. Michigan, according to Bruce Feldman, had upwards of 45 players that would not be eligible to play in this game because of the fact that they either had COVID, contact tracing, injuries, whatever. And you can make fun of Jim Harbaugh. You can make fun of Michigan all you want. I know he's been a punching bag. You can't go play your rival with 40 players in a game of this magnitude. And you can't certainly go play your rival with 40 players when you have not practiced in close to 2 weeks. The last time they practiced was November 27th. So we're talking about a solid, 9-10 days from when we are recording and almost 2 full weeks by the time that they would take the field against Ohio State. And so it sucks. It's a disappointment. It is a bummer. And yeah, I just think it sucks. And again, I know Harbaugh's a punching bag. He wanted to play. He wanted to be part of this rivalry. This rivalry defined him as a player. It defines him as a coach in a negative way. But you could tell he wanted to play even in watching the press conference, where he was very quick to point out that it was the doctors who made the final decision on this one, not him, not his players. But again, you can't blame the doctors either. And you know darn well that if you could blame the doctors, and if I thought there was blame to be placed, I would place it on the doctors. But I think it is one of those deals. It is the reality that we live in. I've spent all year talking about the rules and regulations in college football. I don't have to like them, but that is the deal. That is the circumstance that we are involved in. And because of it, we will have no Michigan-Ohio State. On top of the fact that it is disappointing, it also creates some crazy big picture ramifications for both programs going forward into not only the next few weeks, but potentially the next few years. Very quickly, as it pertains to Michigan, I do think it's fair to ask, with this game canceled, I do think it's fair to ask, is this the last time? Was Tuesday's press conference the final time that we will see Jim Harbaugh in a Michigan hat, shirt, garb, attire, whatever you want to call it? Because it's feeling like it's kind of go time between Michigan and Ohio, between Michigan and Jim Harbaugh. And I'll give myself a little credit. I'll give myself a little pat on the back. But if you listen to Monday's show, I told you that what was going on behind the scenes at Michigan, and it was basically reported exactly as I told you on Monday. Michigan and Jim Harbaugh are in a weird situation where he is on a 1-year contract. You cannot bring him back on a 1-year contract because of the fact that you have to recruit. The 2021 class is set to sign here in a couple weeks. You can't recruit the 2022 class if they don't know who the head coach is going to be. And so it's almost an impossible situation where you either have to give Jim Harbaugh an extension in what is by far his worst season, or you have to let him pursue NFL options. And as I told you on Monday's episode, Michigan did offer or was in the process of offering Jim Harbaugh an extension. And it's not an extension in the traditional way you think of an extension, right? Like when we hear extension, we think like Nick Saban. We think Ryan Day. We think about all these guys in the prime of their careers getting an extra year added on to an already existing 4, 5, 6-year contract. And this is not that case. I was told that any contract would be short. It would be an extension of 2, maybe 3 years tops. There would be a salary reduction. And that's exactly what was reported. John Bacon, who has written many books about Michigan, really plugged in at that school, basically reported exactly what I said on Monday's episode, that it was an incentive-based contract, that it was short 2 or 3 years, that there would be money to go out and add to his coaching staff if he felt the need to, adjust the coaching staff, pay highly paid assistant coaches, but that ultimately it was what I told you. It was a short contract, incentive-laden, and what I can now tell you is that when Jim Harbaugh actually got eyes on what was being offered, he was not very happy because it was the way that the way it was explained to me was that it was a very Michigan-friendly contract. And frankly, I don't necessarily even blame Michigan for it, but that it was a very Michigan-friendly contract that had certainly a salary reduction and a very easy escape clause for the school if he continued to struggle the way that he did this past season, that Jim Harbaugh was not happy with it, and now he's got a real tough decision to make. Because I think I know he loves Michigan. I know he loves the university. I know he wants to be the guy to fix things. But I also think he kind of felt like it was a little bit of a slap in the face. And beyond that, there really is NFL interest from Jim Harbaugh. Also from John Bacon. John Bacon also reported this, but I've heard kind of similarly, is that John Bacon said that upwards of 4 different NFL teams are at the very least interested in Jim Harbaugh. According to John Bacon, none of them have actually offered Jim Harbaugh a job, but that there is interest, right? And that's the one thing that we have to remember. For all his struggles at the college level, Jim Harbaugh is an accomplished coach, and he is an accomplished coach at the NFL level. He has had success. He was a play or two from winning the Super Bowl with Colin Kaepernick in 2012, and that still resonates in the NFL. It might not mean squat to those of us who are college football fans that are seeing this guy get his brains beat in by Ohio State every year, but I'm just telling you from the NFL perspective, his name still carries weight. From what I've been told, Chicago, which currently actually doesn't even have an opening, is very interested. Never forget, Jim Harbaugh actually played in Chicago. Mike Ditka is still very much plugged in with that organization, that team, that city, that him and Mike Ditka have a great relationship. I've also been told that the Jets are going to get the number 1 pick. They're going to get Trevor Lawrence. And they don't want to bring in another, freaking offensive coordinator, fired head coach, whatever, for Trevor Lawrence. They want to bring in an accomplished guy that has won at the NFL level and that they're interested in Jim Harbaugh. I can't speak to the other jobs that are available. I can't speak to the Lions. I can't speak to the Texans. Obviously, I think the Texans would be of interest to anyone because Deshaun Watson is awesome. I think the Chargers is going to open up. I don't know about Harbaugh on that one. He was, of course, in California prior to coming to Michigan. And so the point I'm trying to make is that there is real NFL interest and intrigue for Jim Harbaugh at the NFL level. So with that being said, I just think it's fascinating to see what happens. Now, I already talked about it on last episode, so I won't really get into it, but their bottom line remains it makes sense for both sides for either thing to happen. From Michigan's perspective, the short contract makes sense so that Jim Harbaugh can both sign the 2021 class, which is currently a top 10 class in the country, which does matter. It's a loaded recruiting class. You get them signed. You bring Harbaugh back for another year. You let him get started on 2022. Here's the other thing, though. It also gives them a year to kind of feel out who might be available if Harbaugh does struggle next year and does, really does pursue the NFL offer, right? Because if you think about coming into this year, we could criticize Jim Harbaugh for a lot of things. Nobody thought they were going 2-4, and nobody thought it would get this bad this fast, and there was no reason for Michigan to truly believe that they were in the middle of a potential coaching search by the end of the season. So if you bring Jim Harbaugh back, you keep a top 10 ranked recruiting class, they sign in a couple weeks, and you have an opportunity to evaluate, was this a 1-year aberration, weird thing with COVID, or was it just the way the program is trending, in which case you move on from Jim Harbaugh after next season and you have a year to vet out candidates. On the flip side, for Jim Harbaugh, it makes sense because he can come back, prove that this year was a fluke, prove that whatever you want to say about him, he was pretty successful in those first 5 years, and potentially set himself up for the next wave of NFL coaching jobs. But I also think you would have to consider the fact that, one, he'd be taking a discounted contract, and two, you have another bad year, you put yourself in worse position to get an NFL job. But I'm just telling you, it's fascinating. I have no great feel for what's going to happen. I don't believe that Jim Harbaugh, as of today, knows what he wants to do, but it is a fluid situation, and it is definitely